we can actually pull fear in like a rope a dope, bring him in just close enough to wear himself out and then use that weakness against him. Rocky IV soundtrack swells in the background as our underdog score plays. We can say fear just showed up. Good. We must be about to do work that really matters.
Welcome back to Amplify with Jess Extra, where we amplify your ideas, your influence, and your income. Today's guest is a dear friend and author of one of my favorite books of the year, Underestimated. Now, I'm going to start with a confession that might sound strange, but I secretly love being underestimated. I feel like most of my fearless moments, the times like that I truly was just going for it, was when I felt like no one was watching. But as I've gained somewhat of an audience, I've felt the weight of a different kind of pressure, a fear of letting people down and not living up to these expectations. This is a feeling that our guest, Mary Marantz, knows all too well. She's been on a remarkable journey of her own, and in her new book, she explores how we can move past these fears that hold us back. We're going to talk about how to stop being an underdog, the destructive cycle of perfectionism and self-sabotage, and why Mary believes fear itself is just a boring liar. So let's start at the beginning with the queen of being underestimated, my good friend, Mary Marantz.
We published our first books together at the same time,
That's right.
Chasing the Bright Side. And it was kind of like this blank slate. And now this is what, your third book now?
Third, yeah.
And so do you feel, because you've been so successful, like, oh, now this has to be better?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've always been wired a little bit that way, where I'm just sort of relentlessly unsatisfied, I guess, where I always wanted to up the level. So when you first started describing the feeling of secretly loving being underestimated, I thought you were going a slightly different way, which was, and I talk about this a lot in the book, of like how I have used other people underestimating me like jet fuel. And when someone is actively saying, I always preface this by saying I had so many amazing teachers in high school, so many, who poured into me and saw something great. But there was one in particular who I distinctly remember saying, if anyone is going to make it out of Richwood, West Virginia, it will not be you. And it was like, and back pocket, jet fuel, let's go. And I've really enjoyed. Yeah, it was very strange. She had a daughter in our class, and I think there was some weird competition or what have you. But yeah, I had like one of those free periods where you're like a teacher's assistant, and I was delivering papers to her classroom, and we got into a random conversation, and she made that real clear. And I've loved that because I've used that, right? And I've, to the point, there's actually a 2-word indictment of myself in Underestimated that talks about how we now use every perceived slight. So that word perceived does a lot of work there, because when I don't have an actual slight like that to draw from, then I have to kind of look for it. I have to kind of create these stories in my head of who's leaving me out and who doesn't see the magic in me, so that I can use that to kind of just like explode forward. And man, does it work for a while. Yeah. Man, does it work for a while. It works really well. But then you started talking about, this other side of just like actually getting to practice in the hidden seasons. And I've for sure felt that as well. John Acuff calls that "don't rush your Nebraska years." In Quitter, I think it is. And it's this idea of like, make your mistakes in front of 30 people in a boardroom in Nebraska versus 3,000 in a stadium, or, more than that. And I think about that a lot. And, there does come this point. I talk a lot about this in chapter 14, which is the ultimate chapter in the book, Success is a Slippery Slope. And it says that whole chapter kicks off with, the underdog is a role of a lifetime. And what I mean by that is, if we are not careful, we can spend our whole lives playing that part. Right. Because what we know is that the underdog, the unlikely hero, is the unmitigated darling of all the chanting masses. Mm-hmm. They love you so long as you struggle for it every single solitary step of the way. Do you know who doesn't get that kind of unqualified support? Someone who finds some success and actually keeps it. We know that leaders wear a target on their backs, which now makes us a moving target as we approach the top of this mountain we've been trying so hard to climb. We know it, and it terrifies us. And so at the last minute, we blink, we lose our grip, we lose our way, and the boulder rolls all the way back down the mountain. Okay. So I feel that.
I feel that. And here's one of my questions for you that I feel like, and this is actually what my next book is going to be around, so I feel like we could really noodle on this, is, okay, but do you feel like if I truly feel whole and I believe in myself and I don't feel like I need to pit anyone against me. I don't feel like I need revenge. Feel I feel enough. Will that kill my ambition?
Oh, I've worried about that most of my life, Jess.
Yeah.
In Slow
What's your
Growth,
take on that?
which is my second book, Slow Growth Equals
Yeah.
Strong Roots, I write about, so in Dirt, first of all, I talk about, feeling like the girl in the red cape escaping out of the deep, dark woods, the big bad wolf ripping at her heels. She runs because if she stops running, she knows it just might kill her until finally, breathless and at last exhausted, I look back over my shoulder and I see it. I'm the girl in the red cape, but I'm also the wolf. And that voice telling me to run and not stop running, that voice is my own. Well, then in Slow Growth, I revisit that scene, this time from the perspective of the wolf. My heart breaks that this version of me I was born to protect has yet again, scared her off yet again. And what I say in that section is, at a certain point, the big bad wolf is now afraid of us. Like, we learned how to twist the thorn in its paw because the girl in the red cape, if she doesn't want to stop running from something and stumbling her way into success, then the big bad wolf can't stop chasing her. So we learned how to twist those thorns in the wounds to keep it roaring back into fight or flight any chance that, we get. And the fear is, what if we do all this work to get healed and in the process we lose all of our drive?
Yes.
What if we lose our ambition? What if we just become ordinary? What do we have to settle for being average? Like, we're terrified of losing that jet fuel in the form of our wide open wounds, like we'll use those traumas all we need so long as we get a little more success. And I've worried about that my whole life. The science does not support that at all. The science actually says that self-compassion, which is compassion turned inward, kindness to self, this ability to look upon your own actions and your own life and your own narrative with warmth and humanity and grace, actually is the very fuel for the resilience to go the distance. That those of us who think the most interesting thing about us is how hard we are on ourselves, we go fast in bursts. If you think about like an internal combustion engine, that jet fuel makes a really good explosion and some forward motion, but it is not sustainable. And the renewable fuel source we need to actually make it all the way to the top of the mountain is some self-compassion.
It's so interesting because it is like, you have the Elle Woods, like, oh, people doubted her, they underestimated her, so she turned into this person. But then, like you said, after a certain point, the jet fuel of other people not believing in you wears off. That, like, using that to get back at people. I think, I started my first business because I wanted people to be proud of me.
Right.
And I wanted to, like, my family had been going through a tough time and I wanted to distract them. And so sometimes our reason for starting isn't our same reason for scaling. And like that kind of shifts. You've also talked about, like, there's a really interesting connection between perfectionism and motivation. I think I even flagged it in here, like the motivation defeat cycle. Can we talk about that? That really spoke to me.
Yeah. So this is kind of in chapter 1. So the premise of the book, for everybody who's watching the replay later, is it's based on the idea that fear is actually a really boring liar, which I know we're going to talk more about, and that it uses the same broken scripts on all of us, which we can talk more about, but also it kind of shapeshifts through these same different masks. And so each chapter by chapter, the different masks that fear puts on to try to convince us to stay playing small and hidden on the work we were put here to do. And chapter 1 is the first time I introduce a name of fear other than fear, which is all or nothing thinking. And it can sort of attack people in one of two ways. There's we sort of divide into two camps. There's those of us who heard some all or nothing thinking in our head and we said, I just shouldn't get started at all. That looks like, oh, you can't do this thing from start to finish today. So you better wait for a day when you can. Oh, you can't, this won't be the best one of these that's ever existed yet. So you better wait until you can, like, brainstorm it a little more until it is. This has already been done, so we don't need your voice. So it's anything that kind of says, like, there is this far off future someday that will somehow magically have more time, more money, more energy, more focus. And today is not that day. And so those people never get started. They're standing at the base of the mountain for the first time, staring up, still stuck there all these years later. Another year goes by, the clock goes on ticking, and the world is worse for our absence. The second camp of us, and this is the one that I fall into, is we kind of get all of this courage up, all of this belief in what it can be, this fire in us in our bellies of the world needs more of this. I was put here to do this. And we push this boulder all the way to the top of the mountain. We are almost within, arm's length reach of our breakthrough moment. We can taste the rarefied air. And then like Wile E. Coyote about to get his comeuppance, we blink when we make eye contact with everyone watching at home. That's that fishbowl feeling you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And we self-consciously glance back down and we lose our grip and we lose our way and the boulder rolls all the way back down the mountain. And so for the first group, it's a stop sign. That all or nothing thinking is a stop sign. Don't even start. For the second camp, it's a cycle. It's start off feeling super motivated, inspired. You catch the vision for everything it can be. You have to go do this thing. And step 2 is now to do every single step perfectly. Don't make a single misstep, because even the slightest stumble will just prove to you that you never had what it took all along. Inevitably mess up anyway, because that's what scaling and innovating and doing things that are new and hard in the world requires. That makes you think all of that doubt, sinks in of who this is never going to help anybody, who's ever going to care about this. See, you don't have what it takes. They were right about you all along. Go radio silent, isolate, withdraw, ignore the dream for another year or two, inevitably catch the vision again, remember what it could be, and the whole thing starts all over again. And for anybody listening who that instantly felt like a punch to the gut, like that's been your life for most of these years, this book is for you. It's for both camps for sure. But this whole book really came about by me asking myself, how do we stop repeating the lesson until it is learned, only we never seem to learn it?
So how did you personally break that cycle of like, because we've all had that feeling of like, oh, I'm so excited about this idea, or this book idea is going to change the world. And then we lock ourselves in our room and we write 10,000 words and then it sits there in a Google Doc graveyard.
Yeah.
And, to be fair, like that, not all ideas, like if I went through all my ideas, like just a game of whack-a-mole every day. So yeah, there is some filtering that needs to happen. How did you break that cycle for yourself?
Yeah. So I think a lot of it comes down to this idea of capacity. The subtitle of the book is The Surprisingly Simple Shift to Quit Playing Small, Name the Fear, and Move Forward Anyway. And that surprisingly simple shift, there's an actual breakout, double page spread in the book called The Shift. And it's based on some work that happens in chapter 3. So chapter 1, we were talking about is starting over as a rolling boulder. Then in chapter 2, we get into that idea of fear being a really boring liar with fear as a broken script. Chapter 3 is self-sabotage is a shot glass, and it has absolutely nothing to do with drinking alcohol. It is this idea of a post that I saw on one of those really cheesy success accounts that I follow on Instagram because I like to hate follow them. Some guy coming out of a, private jet going nowhere, whatever.
Yeah, that's probably not his. Yeah.
Right. It was rented for a 15-minute increment. Lions and Lamborghinis, roar until you get everything you came for, like that kind of a vibe. But this post was actually very different in that it was some of the most powerful wisdom I'd ever seen on self-sabotage. And it said, if you think that you have the capacity of a shot glass, then anytime you get a little bit more than that, you will subconsciously shrink yourself back down, self-sabotage. And then I added, until you fit back into the tiny containers you believe you belong in. And this chapter starts to go really deep, Jess, on things like how we grew up in our childhoods, where was there some chaos and some instability, some financial scarcity that we constantly find ourselves returning to, even though we don't want to. Because it's familiar, and like a bad geometry proof gone awry, familiar feels comfortable feels safe. Therefore, we think chaos equals safe. And so a lot of this, what you're describing of that, now there's a lot of eyes on it. What are people going to think about this? Oh, people are going to watch me if this doesn't work out. That can, in one very powerful sense, boil down to, do you trust yourself enough to stand in the position of being that leader? Do you trust yourself to stand in the position of holding that audience, of holding that number of employees, of holding that revenue, making payroll, whatever the case may be? And so a lot of it really is just boiling down to, what do we believe that we can hold well? So I define capacity as our ability to steward something and hold space for it as we respond to it with wisdom. How much do we believe we can hold? And so even though I have the degrees that I have, I've been a full-time entrepreneur for 20 plus years, the way that I grew up tells me that more will inevitably be my downfall. It tells me this lie that more will mean that I will make it all about me, or I won't be able to handle the criticism, or I'll become prideful about it, or I'll mismanage it to the point of failure. More money, more problems, Stanley, right? Like that kind of an idea. And so what we begin to do is we begin to become the grown-up in the room who can be trusted. That's something that Dr. Allison Cook said to me right after I saw that shot glass post. I had her on my podcast. We were talking about it. And she said, for those of us who didn't grow up with a sense of safety or security in childhood, we actually have to reteach as the grown-up in the room, reteach ourselves a sense of safety. And we do that by setting small, manageable, but important commitments to ourselves and then actually keep them. And so I kind of think of it, the last thing I'll say on this is the difference between setting goals and setting intentions. When you set a goal, you get to celebrate on one day, the day the goal actually happens. When you set an intention, every single day you're waking up and saying, who do I have to be today to one day be the person who can stand in the space in the shoes of that goal and hold it well? Then every day you do that, you get to celebrate because every day you're becoming that person. And so the surprisingly simple shift is most of us think we have to quit playing small. You have to go big all the time. And I'm a big fan of the go big moment. Nothing against those. The problem is no go big moment in my life ever changed me on the inside. It was something that happened to me, not somebody I was becoming. So we quit playing small, paradoxically, by starting small.
It reminds me, my husband and I, we just bought this device called Brick. Have you heard of it?
No.
So we both realized that we are, like everyone else, addicted to our phones, especially at night when we're just too tired to talk or do anything else. But we knew that's just not who we want to be. Like, we don't want to just be like mindlessly scrolling. So we got this device that basically turns your phone into a dumb phone, like a razor flip phone. Yeah.
Okay.
And so every night, we brick our phones, when we're done with work. So that way we're with the kids. And I feel like the next morning when I wake up and my phone is still locked, this confidence, because I stayed true to the tiny goal, the daily goal that I set for myself. Yeah. But I have tried, Mary, to say, for 3 months, I'm going to just delete social media, and it kind of that all or nothing, go big or go home mentality. But it was like this small habit that happened every day, like got support for it. And oh my gosh, I just feel like, I'm staying true to this thing that I set up for myself.
My friend Hannah Bridger calls that small things on repeat. Right. And that's just what we see in the science over and over again, about it's like 21 days to start a habit, but really you need to do 3 cycles of the 21 days for it to really take root and become part of your behavior, become kind of automatic. We see that in things like the 21-day fix for This Naked Mind, who does like a, sober curious kind of challenge. We see that in Atomic Habits, talking about this idea of it just really being able to become a part of your identity. And I'm like, one of the big chapters that was really hard for me to write is chapter 13, Distraction is a ticking clock. And it's really a chapter about consistency. I'm not a very consistent person by nature. I'm very super all in, swing for the fences, launch the book, and then go hide for 6 months to recover, especially as an introvert, and so the idea that's really frustrating to me, and it's been like a very hard realization to come to, is that excellence alone versus consistency alone. Unfortunately, in this world, consistency will win every time. I am somebody who spent my whole life being really frustrated that excellence alone does not win the way I think it should. The best book, the best speaker, whatever it is. And so I'm on a mission to get the people of excellence, including myself, to now show up with consistency, because I think you can move people of excellence into consistency. It's a lot harder to move those people who sort of only focus on like marketing themselves. They could care less about the excellence part of it to move to excellence.
But that's optimistic for me, because consistency is attainable for everyone. Excellence feels like it isn't,
Right.
We have a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are speakers, authors, or aspiring to. And a lot of us can probably relate to that feeling of like having to be the motivation to defeat cycle, the need to be perfect, but also the fear. And you have described fear in Underestimated in a way that I have like never heard it before. And so you say that fear can be a prediction for when we're on the right track. So
right.
explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, just to kind of like go back for a little bit, I mentioned this earlier, this idea of fear being a really boring liar. In addition to writing books and having a podcast and being a speaker, I also coach people who want to do those things. And I noticed a couple years ago, I had like a bunch of back-to-back coaching calls, and every single one of them, just, it was eerie how copy and paste the sentences coming out of their mouths were. Like it was like Mad Lib scripts. Like they were basically saying the same thing, different projects, different goals, different places in life. But the scripts were basically the same, and fear was winning. And it was happening in my life too. And it was making me really mad. And so I just got on my phone one day with like no introduction and filmed this video that was like, it's all been done. It's all been done better. It's all been done by somebody the world actually wants to pay attention to. I can't start until it's perfect. I can't start until I'm perfect. What if I start and the critics come? What if they say, who does she think she is? What if I start and I fail and I prove everyone who said I couldn't do it that they were right all along? What if I can't stay consistent with it? What if I don't have the bandwidth right now? What if my voice doesn't really matter? What if I don't really matter? What if it's already too late? And it's like, check. If we were playing bingo just then, you know, it's like up, down, sideways, diagonal, whatever.
Mic drop as well. Yeah.
And that background led me to this moment, this kind of dots connecting in a way I'd never seen them connected before, moment that I think every writer, it's like the high we're chasing, which is, what if fear attacks creatives in particular because it is jealous that it itself is not creative at all? It is not a creative force. It is a destructive force. It is a desperate force. It is not a creative force. Short of having these two gifts, the ability to throw its voice so it sounds like you, because if it sounded like Morgan Freeman in your head, you could catch it every time, and the ability to shapeshift faces. Just when you catch it coming in the front door as perfectionism, it sneaks in the side door as imposter syndrome. It's not a creative enemy, but it is a slippery enemy. Short of those two gifts, it's not imbued with any inherent gifts at all. It's not creating beauty in the world. It's not moving the world forward. It's not helping people. And so it particularly attacks those of us I have a theory that it actually attacks creatives at the crosshair intersection where our gifts meet our story, because it knows that we need both of those things to make the impact we were put here to have. If I just use a gift of words and say a bunch of pretty words strung together, then I am like that clanging gong or cymbal. It requires my story, what breaks my heart, for other people's hearts when they're breaking, that adds that empathy element that actually is where I make a difference in the world. And so fear will try to take us out at both axes. You know, if you have a gift of words, it'll say your voice doesn't matter. If you have the gift of helping people, it'll say you're so selfish to begin this work. If you have the gift of being a visionary, seeing people for who they're becoming, it will make sure you spend your whole life feeling invisible and unseen. And if you have a powerful story, it will tell you it disqualifies you before you even begin. And so the good part about that, I say, is fear is not a very creative guy, but he is a busy guy.
I loved that line.
He is a busy guy. And like any productive overachiever, he's learned how to prioritize. So if you are already playing small and hiding in plain sight, he's going to leave you alone. A little fear, maintenance mode, perfectionism sprinkled in, and you are all set. But show up and actually start to do the work you were put here to do, the work you are called to do, the work that will change the world. And you better expect fear to show up teeth bared and snarling. Like that mask will fall off real fast, and you will see just how vicious and venomous fear really can be. And so for me, it is never when I'm doing work that I shouldn't be doing that fear shows up. It is quite the opposite. In direct proportion to how much the work I'm about to do matters is how much fear attacks me. So let me tell you about how the last 12 months went writing a book that actually takes down fear, you know? And so we can actually pull fear in like a rope a dope, you know, bring him in just close enough to wear himself out and then use that weakness against him. Rocky IV soundtrack swells in the background as our underdog score plays. We can say fear just showed up. Good. We must be about to do work that really matters.
Oh my gosh. That is such a reframe. Like, especially I think about it when I'm standing backstage.
Yeah.
And it's like they're reading my introduction. That is always the time. I don't care how long I've been doing this.
Yeah.
Like, it is always a time where I'm like, who do you think you are?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who do you think you are that you're going to go out and talk to these people and tell them something they don't already know? And if I can, and I always have my mantras and kind of my techniques that I go through, but if I can say, oh, welcome, that's because I truly give a shit about.
That's right.
Then
that's right.
Such a reframe.
Yeah. The script we flip it for is good. I must really care about this work I'm about to do. Yes. Because going back to what I said earlier about excellence and consistency, or those people who are just really good at marketing, some of the least real deal people I've ever met in my life are not afraid at all. And like, why would they be? They didn't do anything to actually come up with that content. They didn't bleed on the page or originate ideas. They're just sort of copying and pasting what's already been said. Yes. So why would they be afraid?
And it's like, I connect to people so much when I can see their fear,
Yeah.
hear their hero story, instead of like, no one's like, it's really hard to connect with someone who is like, I have never struck out, or
That's
I've
right.
never been, like, you want to hear, I was scared and I did it anyway, and here's how you can do it too.
Right.
Okay, so I took your quiz.
Okay.
Achieverquiz.com. Everyone take it. Also, hell of a domain. Way to go.
Yeah. Achieverquiz.com. That's right. Yes.
I am the performer.
Same. Me too.
No shock, I think, to anyone listening.
Yep.
Before we close, why is it important to know like your achievement type?
Yeah.
And also maybe tell me something about myself being a performer. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so at achieverquiz.com, we have 5 different achiever types. And depending on your type, you are going to play small in different ways and get stuck in different ways. And you're going to need different things to move you forward based on your type to kind of get out of that cycle of fear. I came up with those 5 types first in Slow Growth. Equal Strong Reason was talking about how do you stop achieving for your worth for each different type. But then I realized and underestimated it also carries over for how we're playing small. And so we have the performer who's always on their toes, needs to show themselves for sure, but also other people how far they've come. I am also for sure a performer. We have the tightrope walker who could care less who else is clapping, but they need higher and higher death-defying feats to feel the same amount of good, to have the same amount of dopamine. The masquerader doesn't really want to go after goals for themselves. They don't want to do it for other people. They stay hidden in plain sight because they don't want to let either group down, themselves or anybody else. The contortionist is our classic people pleaser. They twist themselves up into tiny tethered knots because to contort is easier than to be criticized. They wouldn't go after those goals just on their own, but they will go after them to make somebody else happy, to people please someone else. And then the illusionist in the distance also doesn't go after them for either group, but they're slightly different from the masquerader because they believe that all the conditions to begin and they themselves must be perfect before they can even start. So that's our classic, like, perfectionism is a forever delaying tactic group. And so if you go to the quiz, achieverquiz.com, we have 10 questions. They're super light and easy, fun questions, really silly kind of on the questions. And then in true Mary form, we go really deep on the results. And I would say as the performer, one of the most important things for you to know is that there's this feeling that it's sort of themed after a ballerina. It's this idea that you must always be on your toes. You must be like spinning all the plates and all the fates, never once letting anything drop, including the act. It's this belief that you are only as worthy of love, as strong as you can be, and as much as you can deliver on the results. And for me and for you both, it is sort of a lifelong journey of not feeling like you always have to be the one who always comes through. The one who feels like you can't count on anyone else and everyone else is counting on you. And there's a whole section of Underestimated where I talk about how hard it is for me to ask for help or to even show any kind of vulnerability. Like, I don't want you feeling sorry for me. I don't want your good advice or best intentions. They feel like condescension. I don't want to have to worry about you worrying about me. And so we kind of start to get into some of the deeper roots of like what in our childhood told us we can't be a bother to anyone in order to be loved.
Oh my gosh, I need to dive in because that is so me. And I'm also like, why is no one helping me? And then someone helps me. I'm like, not like that.
Right.
Well, duh, no one's going to want to help you. Mary, this has been an incredible conversation. Everyone grab Underestimated, Mary Marantz, and listen to the Mary Marantz Show. It's one of my favorite podcasts that I've ever guested on and listened to. Where else can people find you?
Yeah, if you actually head over to namethefear.com, so that's from the subtitle, namethefear.com, really quickly, because one of the most powerful things that I think this book does, like the real backbone of the work that this book does, is it allows you to cut fear off mid-sentence. There's a saying that says the fish don't know the water's toxic because they're so immersed in it. And so when fear is in your head as your own voice, you said that you were saying to yourself, who do you think you are? But I don't think it was you. I think it was fear, this outside destructive force. And so anyway, the quicker we know humans grow, like learn and recall best from story and unexpected visual, visceral metaphor. And so I am giving you all these really unexpected metaphors, like the Edward Scissorhands problem, the research riptide, the princess and the pea, the colossus of clout. So every chapter, every face of fear has these really unexpected, memorable ways of thinking about it. So it's much easier to go.
And research you really pepper that throughout the book. If any of you are visual learners, Underestimated has incredible graphics that like you can really take a little snapshot and remember.
That's right. And so anyway, I was on a podcast called This Changes Everything with Sarah Rice, and she said it's like in The Wizard of Oz, the great and powerful, terrifying Oz. When you pull the curtain back, it's just this little man. And I said, yeah, a snake oil salesman who's trying to sell us on this grift that somehow creating nothing is better than creating any kind of failure at all. And so when we name that fear mid-sentence, we just whoosh all the power out of the room. It doesn't necessarily leave, but we take all of its power away the same way as when we pull back the curtain on The Wizard of Oz. So if you go to namethefear.com, we have the whole first chapter up there for free. Starting over as a rolling boulder, you can get a whole feel for my writing style, those visual, visceral metaphors. The all or nothing cycle is in there, motivation and defeat. And the Wile E. Coyote reference, which is one of my favorite in the whole book, plus a very fun Jurassic Park one. So you can find that. And the quiz is also on that same site at namethefear.com.
Namethefear.com. I have domain envy there. I don't get that often because I own about like 600 domains, but I might have to go head to head for you on this one.
Yeah. Well, that came out of a disappointment because underestimated.com was not available. But we pivot.
There you go. And you found something else.
That's right.
Mary, you're the best. Thank you so much for taking your time. Everyone go by Underestimated. Give Mary a follow, and we'll see y'all soon.
Thanks for listening to Amplify. If you're a fan of the show, show us some podcast love by giving us a rating and review. This episode is brought to you by Mic Drop Workshop, where you can learn how to become a better speaker, how to land paid speaking gigs, and become a keynote speaker. This episode was edited and produced by Walk West. I'm Jess Ekstrom, reminding you that you deserve the biggest stage, so let's find out how to get you there. I'll see you again soon.